Hey, it's Darius. Welcome back for more JavaScript. In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about loops and iteration. But first, let's solve the challenge from the last problem, or the last tutorial, and that is to make a function which returns the smaller of two numbers. We're going to, I'm going to code this right in front of you here. If A is smaller than B, it is an answer. It's our answer, and so we want to return A. And it will stop the function right there and give us our output. However, if that if statement is false, it will instead run return B. Why? Because that means that B was smaller than A, or B was equal to A. In that case, it doesn't matter which one you return, so we'll be fine. Let's test it. -3 is in fact the smaller of 3 and -3, so thumbs up. That's good. So there's our challenge. I just wanted you to see that it's fine to have multiple return statements as long as you think it out. Because obviously you can't have any code after a return statement. It'll never reach there. See, unreachable code after return statement. Alright. That's it for the challenge. So remember back to tutorial 04 when we talked about arrays. And we can create lists of data. Let's just call it A, and we could say, you know, what is the first element in A, or now I want the first element of A to be hello. Or what is the length of A? And finally, we can like add items. That's all great for creating arrays, but say you're given an array and you want to iterate through each item and do something to each item, like maybe even just print it out on the screen. Let's say we want to make some code that will console.log one at a time all the items in a function. So there's like 3 ways to do this, and I'm going to start with a while loop because it's easy to understand. And it works exactly like an if statement in that you provide a condition up here and between the parentheses, and if it's true, then it will run the code. Alright. And but now whenever it runs a code, it will come back up and check the condition again. And if the condition is still true, it will run your code again. And then it will check the condition and run the code again. So as long as the condition remains true, it will keep running the code. So what we can do is make a little counter, initialize it to 0, and then at the end of each iteration, we'll increment the counter. And we will say while count is less than 10, console.log running, and let's do string interpolation and print out the count. And you can reason about this code. It will start at 0. 0 is less than 10. It will say running 0, increment it to 1, and it will keep doing that until count is equal to 9. That'll be the last time it runs, because after it increments to 10, 10 is not less than 10. So it will actually start from 0 and go to 9, which is still 10 iterations, but you won't see the number 10 printed. See that? It starts at 0, ends at 9. There are 10 of these, but because it starts at 0, you don't see 10 at the end. You could start counting at 1, but it's still, but that doesn't, it might not do exactly what you think, because we're still stopping before 10. Or what you would have to do is say if count is less than or equal to 10, and that way it will stop whenever count equals 11. Okay. Instead of 10, we could throw the array's length in there. I guess it's A. 1, 2, 3. But what you'll realize is, if we're wanting to print out the value of an array, that since arrays are already 0 indexed, you might as well just make this 0 and have it count from 0 to 1 less than the length. And I'm going to do some fancy string interpolation. This looks like JavaScript code I'm putting in here, but I'm really just you'll see what it looks like when I run it. There, okay. I tried to make the output look like JavaScript code. That's all it did. So that's one way to do iteration. Maybe what I should have done was say let item equal a count, and then item. Anyway, you get the idea. That's a while loop. Now I'm going to introduce a for loop, which is a little more complex, and it fulfills almost the same purpose, but in this case we initialize the counter inside, and then we give the condition. And then we put the increment. And this is kind of nice because it's all confined. Everything you have to do to set it up is confined on the for loop line, and not before and in the middle of what you're trying to do. And so I should just be able to copy this. And the for loop output is the same as the while. There's one more we can do, and that is that an array actually has a built-in function called forEach. And to use it, you have to remember what I told you in the function video, that maybe I didn't. Well, so one of the things you can do with functions is create them right on the spot. Well, let's we'll go one step at a time here. We'll define a function called I'm gonna call it process item. We'll call it process item, and the first argument will be item. The second argument will be count. And we're just curious what these actually are, so we're gonna log them. And now for the for each, we just give it that function. And what it's going to do is run our function once for each item in the array, and it will store that item in the first variable, and then it will store the count starting at 0, the second variable. So we have item, you know what, let me change it from 0, 1, 2, and 3 to something apple, grape, and banana. Okay, so the item comes directly out of the list, and then the count just starts from 0 and goes on. It's the same as the count up here. Alright, so now what I wanted to get into is that functions in JavaScript don't have to have a name if you're going to be executing them right away. So I can take that whole function and just pass it in there. Just like that. And it works just fine. Let's dig into this a little more. If I can pass it into a function, that means I can also set a variable equal to it. Whereas before we said we were doing function declaration, where we gave it some name and then parameters and all that jazz. Function expression is what we call this when we don't give it a name, and it kind of returns the function itself so that we can store it in a variable and use it later. Or if we don't store it in a variable, we can use it as a parameter for another function. We see this in JavaScript all the time. So those are the 3 ways that you can iterate arrays in JavaScript. And it's time for a challenge. I'm going to ask you to make a function called maybe not search, but to call it word count. And I want to be able to give it a word like apple, and then also give it a list of other words and tell me how many times the first word shows up in the list. Alright, that is the challenge. You should know all the required JavaScript to be able to implement that. So have fun with it, and as always, I will see you in the next tutorial. Thanks for watching.